Hello, welcome. We're here to talk about books. Hope you're into that, because that's what we're going to do here. All right. So, my name's Ella. This is my first YouTube video. I am not nervous. This is going to go great, and I'm going to have no technical difficulties, even though I already shot this video before, and my microphone died halfway through, and it didn't have sound. So, here we are again. Things are going great. All right, so since this is my first YouTube video, I thought best way to introduce myself and kind of share my taste in books and the kind of books I'm going to be talking about is to do like a year in review for what I read in 2024 to give you a taste of my tastes, essentially. Let's get into, instead of going through everything, because that would be a long video, let's do my faves and disappointments. First one was Little Eve by Katrina Ward. So this is a historical kind of maybe speculative, kind of a mystery. Essentially, there's a group of people who live like in this old castle. I think this is in the north of England or Scotland, on a little castle in a castle on a little island. It's a kind of island like when the tide is up. It's an island when the tide is low. You can walk out there. So they live on there. They have like a charismatic leader. It's essentially a cult. And they kind of are they're kind of left alone by the community, the town nearby. But then one day, the butcher is delivering a bunch of meat. And when he gets there, he discovers that they're all dead, except for one person. And then the question becomes, is this person just survived out of, good luck? Or maybe is she the killer? It's super atmospheric, very gothic, terrible weather. It's cold, it's wet. Really spooky vibes. There's like the cult leader has like a pet snake that he uses to like test his followers to see how good they are. Really well written and very suspenseful. Love that one. The next is Endless Night by Agatha Christie. I was really surprised by this one. I don't read a ton of Christie, but I've enjoyed some of hers. Been kind of blah. Others are just kind of blah. But Endless Night is not a classic mystery. We don't have Poirot here. It's more of like a thriller type with an unreliable narrator. So the premise is this man who's kind of like, I don't know, lower middle class. He meets an heiress. They fall in love. They get married. They buy this property called Gypsy's Acre. This is in England, or is it Wales? Something like that. And they get an architect, like a big fancy architect, to build like this really big modern house up there. But they have been warned before they started doing this by the townspeople that, Gypsy's Acre, don't go up there. Bad things happen. It's just bad luck. I don't know if we want to say as far as cursed, but it's just like they think, we just leave Gypsy Acre alone. We don't get involved with that. But they don't listen. Then once the house is built and they move in, like strange things start happening. They receive some threatening letters. They're spooked in the middle of the night. And so they're really afraid. They don't know what to do. And then one day the heiress goes out riding her horse and ends up dead. And there is a question whether, it's just a riding accident or was she murdered? And by who? Is it by the townspeople who warned them not to go up to Gypsy Acres? Or is it her husband? Right, because isn't it always the husband? So it's told in first person, narrated by the husband. Is he a reliable narrator? We shall see. You're going to have to read it. Love this one. Very fast paced. Really great characterization. It's really unlike any Christie I've read before. It's later in her career. It's kind of like she just threw out, a curveball to all of us, and highly recommend it. Okay, the next, I actually have it. Burial Rites. This is by Hannah Kent. And so this is a historical novel based on a true story about the last woman to be executed in Iceland. Um, so this is about a woman named Agnes. She is convicted of killing her employer slash maybe lover, um, along with uh, another employee of this man. They were servants at his house. So she's convicted, but she has to wait a while for her execution because at this time, Iceland is overseen by the government in Denmark, and so to get permission to do an execution, they have to like put a letter on a ship, and the ship has to go to Denmark, and then like the king has to agree, and then has to write a letter, and it has to go back. So there are months where she has to wait, and they don't really have jails, for women. They don't really know what to do with her, so they end up sending her to be a servant at like a farm. So we kind of get to know Agnes. Also, a young priest, has been appointed to kind of help her, repent. And so, we get to follow the kind of conversations that he's having with her because he's trying to figure out, is this woman innocent? Did this woman have good reason to participate in this murder? Has she been framed? Like, what's going on here? This is such an atmospheric book. The way that Hannah Kant writes about the landscape, and the wildlife and the weather, it's just so beautiful. It's heartbreaking and it's dark, but it also, I think, is emotionally very honest, and just beautifully written. So highly recommend this one. So if you read Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney and you thought, interesting premise, but the characters are unlikable and the whole thing was a bit dull, you'll love this. So this is okay. I lost the jacket, the book jacket. But this is The Rachel Incident by Carolyn O'Donoghue. So yeah, very similar premise to Conversations with Friends. It's about two college students who get kind of embroiled in an older couple that are kind of, they're kind of wealthy. They work in the arts, and then things go awry, terribly awry. But instead of being in Dublin, it's in Cork. This has great characters that you want to be friends with and want to spend time with. It's funny, it's heartfelt, but not like cheesy or melodramatic or anything. And it has an ending. You get some closure at the end of this. So fun to read. I picked this up. I was like kind of like a snoozy Sunday afternoon, and I picked it up thinking, oh, I'll give this a go. And then I stayed up all night to finish it. Okay, not all night. It's just like it was past midnight, which is way past my bedtime, but yeah, I stayed up because it was just I wanted to know, and I was having such a good time. And I think this one was kind of a big deal in the UK. It sold a lot in the UK, but I haven't seen it in the US a lot. So definitely pick up The Rachel Incident. Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to get good at YouTube and talking. Okay. The Rachel Incident by Carolyn O'Donoghue. Okay, this is The Vixen, Amber Holloway. So I'm going to just read the back of this one. Ophelia, a professor of Dante, is stricken when she discovers that her husband, Andy, has been cheating on her with a winsome colleague, Amber Holloway. What follows is Ophelia's figurative descent into hell as she obsessively tracks her subjects, performs surveillance from her beat-up Volvo, and surreptitiously moves into the foreclosed property next door to Amber's. Spying on the lovers, Ophelia is tormented anew by the abandonment of her mother at age 8 and becomes increasingly estranged from the reality of her surroundings. The escalating tension comes to a crisis, however, when Andy and Amber become engaged. The Vixen, Amber Holloway, is a jailhouse confessional, a dark comedy, an over a women's rage, a suspenseful revenge fantasy, and a moving portrait of one woman's psychological breakdown. Incredibly dark, but very funny, and it does have a lot of heart. This is a character that I think would be very hard to spend a lot of time with, and luckily it's fewer than 200 pages. If this was longer, I don't know if it would work, but the shortness of this really works with the voice and the style and the story. It just all works together. This is not a character I would want to be friends with, but I get her. You really come to an understanding of why she is the way that she is, and you are screaming at her the whole time like, "Girl, take a shower. Get out of that basement. Okay? Eat a vegetable. Just anything." Because you can see what's coming, you know what's happening, and you want to save her. You want to save her from herself. It says, this is a jailhouse confessional. She doesn't save herself from herself. Things go very, very wrong. Very wrong. I would not say this is a delightful read. Not fun, but very interesting and engaging. Really well written. So I do have a notable, I won't say it's a fave. It could have been, but yeah, The Ministry of Time by Kalian Bradley. All right. I know this is a polarizing one. Like, people either seem to love or hate it. I think if you're a sci-fi fan, you're not going to like it because the time travel, the science doesn't make any sense. Like, the destination, what happened, I can't tell you. But the journey, I enjoyed it. I thought it was clever and funny. Very charming. Charming is the writing style. Very, very charming. Really liked it overall. I didn't even tell you what this one's about. I bet you already know. Yeah, it's about time travel. The UK government has figured out how to do that. And so they go into the past and like pluck out people right before they die to like not mess with the butterfly effect or whatever. And they bring them to modern time, and each one is given like a handler to live with them and like teach them how to be a person in the modern world. Our main character is one of those handlers, and she gets matched up with a naval officer that was about to die in like a failed expedition to find the Northwest Passage or something in the north, like up in Canada, like Banff, maybe up there. It's been a while since I read this one. And this naval officer is just the most charming man that's ever existed, and I just wanted to hang out with him. I just enjoyed it until the end. Like, journey, great. Destination, no, I didn't feel it. Okay, disappointments. I have four books I was really disappointed with. The first one is called Scorched Grace by Margot Duahi. This is about a nun trying to solve a murder in New Orleans. It's modern day. There's like this nun who in a past life was like a punk rock. She has tattoos. She smokes. But she decided to become a nun after something terrible happens and makes her question herself. And then, yeah, there's a fire at the nunnery. Well, it's not a nunnery per se. They aren't cloistered nuns. These are nuns that work in a school, in like a Catholic school. And there's a fire one day, and somebody dies. And this nun thinks that something is afoot. She doesn't think this is an accidental fire, and she tries to figure it out, even though the police are there trying to figure it out. She doesn't trust them to do that for reasons that were never very clear. And this was a big disappointment because the mystery wasn't very mysterious. Character motivations were... there are things that don't make sense. Like, at one point, the nun is locked in a closet, and you never find out if she accidentally did there, if somebody did it to her, and then did somebody lock her in the closet because she has like disagreements with other nuns and they're just sick of her, and so they decided to lock her up for a little bit, or if this is somebody who's trying to keep her from figuring out who set the fire and who is the murderer. Like, things like that are just not explained, and it was just kind of a wah-wah all around. Next disappointment, it's called The City of Stardust by Georgie Summers. Now, this one has a super cool premise. It's about this family that many years ago got into some sort of agreement with a supernatural being from like another world that is connected to our world with like a portal thing. In exchange for something, um, this supernatural being gets to take a woman every generation. I think it's a woman, not a man. Yeah, every generation she gets to take a woman from this family, and presumably that person ends up dead. And so one time, the woman, it's her turn to like be stolen. She finds out she's pregnant. It's a girl. She does not want this to happen to her daughter, so she decides to keep her. She conceals her pregnancy, gives birth, has her brother like take the daughter away to like hide, and then the mom disappears. So the brothers raise this girl like in the family home. They don't let her go to school. They don't tell anybody about her. She's just locked up in the family house. I guess she can go in the yard. But other than that, she doesn't leave the family house. And this is all in an attempt to keep her existence hidden from the supernatural being who is named Penelope. But then, when the girl turns 18, when the daughter turns 18, she decides, I'm going to go find my mom. And I'm going to get some answers about what's going on here. And so that sounds like a really, cool premise, except that, the author set up all this really great stuff and she just did not follow through on most of it. Thing that really irked me was, okay, so when the daughter is about like 12, Penelope finds out she exists. So that cat is out of the bag, right? But despite that, the whole reason why this girl was being kept at home and not allowed to have a life was to conceal her existence. But now her existence is out there. And yet the girl is still kept at home and is not allowed to have a life. So like she never goes to school. And this takes place in the UK. So she doesn't take her GCSEs. So she's not able to go to college, which is like a huge bummer to her because she's always wanted to go to college. But it's like, why keep her home? Like once Penelope finds out, there's no reason for her to stay home. So like let her go to school. That's never explained. And then this girl like goes out into the world and she behaves as if none of this is new to her. Like she's not socially inept. She's able to navigate. Like she gets on planes and travels all over the world trying to find her mother. And there's not a moment where she's like, oh gosh, I really wish my uncles had taught me how to get a taxi or what Lyft and Uber are. Like nothing. Like she just there's never a moment when she is not prepared to be in the world. And there's a moment when she like kisses a guy, but it's never remarked upon, like, is this her first kiss? Like, has she had boyfriends before? Has she had friends? Like, she knows how to do all these things. But how? You were stuck at home until you were 18 for no reason. And then the other thing is we do follow a character that's able to go to this other world where Penelope is from. And so we were in that world, and the world, just no world building. Like it felt like vaguely Northern European kind of vibes over there, but other than that, like there's nothing that makes it kind of otherworldly or spectacular. It's just kind of, you're just told it's a different world. So I just felt like this one was really undercooked, and not developed. So much cool stuff. And it really felt like this is a kind of book that I'm noticing coming out a lot right now, which I kind of refer to as like vagary and vibes. Like the author is super vague and they're hoping that just vibes is going to take this narrative through, and I'm like, no, thank you. I want more. Give me the through line. You're setting up stuff. Bring all that stuff to its logical conclusion. Setup is not enough. You got to carry it all out. The Luminaries by Eleanor Canton. So this won the Booker in 2013. And I think at the time when Eleanor won, she was the youngest person to ever win the Booker. And this is the longest book to ever win the Booker. I think it's 800 pages. And this book This book catfished me. Earlier I was talking about like, oh, destination wasn't so good, but the journey was worth it. This one, the destination, huge letdown, and the journey was a slog. You spend like the first 115 pages with a character, which you assume is your main character, except he doesn't end up mattering for the majority of the other 700 pages. You're like, why are we spending so much time with this guy? Why? Oh, I'll just like read the back so you know what this one is about. So it is 1866, and Walter Moody, the guy you think is going to be the main character but isn't, has come to make his fortune upon the New Zealand goldfields. On the night of his arrival, he stumbles across a tense gathering of 12 local men who have met in secret to discuss a series of unsolved crimes. The town's wealthiest man has vanished, a prostitute has tried to end her life, and an enormous fortune has been discovered in the home of a luckless drunk. Moody is soon drawn into the mystery and network of fates and fortunes that is exquisitely patterned as the night sky. Okay. Astrology plays a role in this. I know nothing about astrology, and I don't think it really matters. You don't need to know about it to understand the narrative, but it does fall into the structure of this book. And the structure is basically at the beginning of every chapter is like a short like summary of what happens there. Like I'll read you the first one so you can understand. Like this says Mercury in Sagittarius. So that's like the title. I don't know what Mercury in Sagittarius means. And then it says, in which a stranger arrives in Hokitika, a secret council is disturbed. Walter Moody conceals his most recent memory, and Thomas Balfour begins to tell a story. So that's like a summary, very vague, opaque summary of what's going to happen. And this first chapter is 115 pages. And it's all from the point of view of Mr. Walter Moody, who does not matter. This is kind of written like a Victorian novel. And so it takes its time. It's very descriptive. You spend a lot of time with characters. There are 12 characters, like where it says Walter Moody stumbles upon a tense gathering of 12 local men. We meet all 12 of those men in depth. They all get a chapter about them. And the vast majority of them do not matter to the narrative. And the true, like, main characters who really matter in this whole thing, we don't get anything from their point of view. We barely get anything from their point of view. And we mostly only really meet them and know anything about them at the end. And then at the end, it does this thing structure where those summaries that were at the beginning, by the end, those summaries end up being like this long. And then the chapter that follows is like a paragraph or two. And the thing is, these summaries, they come at the end, at the denouement. Like, okay, I've read 800 pages. I am ready to see these scenes where all the shit is revealed. I'm sorry. That was naughty. All this stuff is revealed. And you're so ready to see those scenes, and you don't. You don't get those scenes. It's told in summary. It's just like an emotional woo. It's all just... This was a big one for me. The Blackbird Oracle by Deborah Harkness. Okay. The All Souls trilogy, which starts with A Discovery of Witches, one of my all-time favorite series. I've reread those more times than I know. Like, I couldn't even tell you. I love Matthew and Diana. And when I heard that Deborah was going back into their world and continuing the series and going to dive more into Diana's magic and like really dark elements, I was like, let's go. I'm ready. I pre-ordered. I started reading the day I got it. It did not hit. It was the opposite of hitting. It was the opposite. So I just felt like my big gripe was, through the course of the All Source trilogy, those 4 novels, like characters really grew. You had these great character arcs, like Diana accepts her magic, starts using it, she comes into her power, you know, she becomes this great woman. And Matthew, learns to not be so angry about dumb stuff all the time. And he learns to trust Diana, and they both grow, as a couple. But at the start of the Blackbird Oracle, it's like those characters have taken like 3 steps back. Like Matthew is back to being mad about dumb stuff. Um, and Diana is not using her magic. She goes all the way to Elizabethan England to learn about weaving by Goody Alsop, and now she does not weave. Gave up everything she gained. Um, and then the premise is, she gets called to go spend time with her father's family and learn about his magic and learn more about her magic. And she goes to do that and meets like an elderly relative. I don't remember if it's like a great grandmother or a great aunt or something. And she's, learning more about her father and family secrets and more about her magic. But like the magic she's learning now is called like, is it elemental magic? I don't remember. It's a different type of magic, and it's just so not as cool or interesting as weaving. It's kind of like, it's like bibbity boppity boo kind of magic. Like now all of a sudden witches use wands. There were no wands in the first 3 books. And like now there are like fairies and other like magical creatures, which were not in the original series. It's not interesting. And the conflicts all felt manufactured and overblown and melodramatic, and like it really felt less sophisticated, less crafted, and less thought out than the others, the first 3 in the series. I think it's best if I just pretend the new books don't exist and just remember the great experience I had with the first 3, because oof, this video has gone way too long. I spend too much time talking. I'm gonna have to learn how to be more succinct. I'm gonna get better at YouTube. I'm gonna try to post about once a week. So if you think those are some videos you might want to watch, subscribe and do that like thing. Like it, like this video, because that would make me feel really happy that somebody actually watched this video and enjoyed it. That would be super cool. And yeah, leave a comment, say hello, introduce yourself. I'll be around. So thanks so much. Bye.